She disappeared from social media for exactly 8 days. Not a whisper, not a like, not even a story. Then she came back with a black square, no caption. 3 hours later, she posted a cryptic note. There's always more to the story. Some people just can't handle the edit. The comments section ignited, half support, half disbelief. Conspiracy theories bloomed. Was it a breakdown? A breakup? A marketing ploy that backfired? Or something darker that went off script? The wedding footage was quietly shelved. Officially, the network passed. Unofficially, too many NDAs got torn up after that night. But the clips, the ones that weren't supposed to leak, they did. Not from me. Probably. One went viral. Then another. Then a third. By the time her hashtag finally trended, it wasn't a celebration. It was a reckoning. And that pilot? It still exists. On a hard drive. In a vault. I've watched it more times than I should. Not because of what happened, but because of what almost happened. And if the right platform offered the right number. Who knows? Maybe the world will get to see the wedding they were never supposed to witness. It was supposed to be the moment everything changed. Not just for them, the couple at the center of it all, but for everyone behind the scenes, too. The managers, the strategists, the stylists, the editors, the ghostwriters, the brand architects. The machine. A wedding, yes, but not a wedding in the traditional sense. This was an event engineered for virality. A comeback. A launchpad. A legacy-defining production with algorithms factored into the floral arrangements. It had taken 5 months of planning, 4 production crews, and 3 PR firms just to get to this rooftop. From above, the venue looked like a dream. Draped in chiffon and fairy lights, the skyline sparkling like a promise no one intended to keep. Every detail had been curated for maximum visual impact. Custom acrylic seating engraved with trending quotes, champagne fountains rimmed with edible shimmer, a floral canopy designed to appear accidentally perfect from every possible drone angle. Even the sun had been timed. Guests arrived by tier, platinum-level influencers in the front row, mid-tier media personalities trailing behind them, a few strategically placed micro-influencers acting as organic content amplifiers. Every guest signed a waiver. Every guest agreed to post. No +1s unless pre-approved. This wasn't just a wedding. It was a pilot. The couple at the center were photogenic and pliable. She was an influencer with millions of followers and a perfectly managed empire of wellness, lifestyle, and cryptic affirmations. He was a former television actor, once famous enough to get recognized at restaurants, now clinging to relevance with the help of nostalgia and shirtless podcast appearances. Their relationship was never supposed to be private. They met on camera, got engaged on camera. The proposal was uploaded in 4 parts: teaser, reveal, reaction, behind the scenes. It was only logical that the wedding be monetized. Except this wasn't reality TV in the classic sense. There were no confessionals in backrooms or producers whispering lines. This was the new format, soft scripted authenticity. Every moment was real, until it wasn't. The emotions were genuine until the lighting was wrong. The pilot, titled #Forever, had been sold on a promise. This wedding would blur the line between performance and intimacy so perfectly, no one would know which was which. I was one of the executive producers. My job wasn't just to keep the day running smoothly, it was to ensure the right kind of chaos happened, in the right doses, at the right moments. A spilled drink here. A misunderstood comment there. Just enough tension to make people watch without making anyone walk out. We had a plan. 3 narrative beats by sunset. 2 dramatic reversals by the afterparty. 1 viral moment before midnight. The bride had memorized her beats better than any of us. She was a perfectionist, a master of light angles, mic placement, and sponsored vulnerability. She didn't speak in sentences, she spoke in captions. Her life had been honed for engagement, and today was supposed to be her masterpiece. There were 4 dress changes scheduled throughout the day. Each one signaled a different mood: ethereal innocence, empowered glam, playful luxury, and finally, the closer, iconic triumph. The groom, by contrast, was quieter. He smiled on cue, wore the custom suit we told him to wear, and never objected to the endless rehearsals. He was the kind of man who mistook silence for peace. His role was simple: look good, say nothing controversial, kiss on command. By 3 p.m., we were on schedule. The drone team was in position. The sound crew had finished wiring the altar. The hashtag was already being seeded across 3 platforms. #Forever starts now. There were LED trackers in the analytics tent. A glowing counter next to the DJ booth, showing how many posts were live, how many had been reshared, how many mentions per second. Everything, and I mean everything, was going according to plan. But then came the first signal. The analytics board wasn't blinking the way it should have. The hashtag had stalled. Not flatlined. Just sluggish. Slower than expected. Lower in rank than the team predicted. It was still early. But that didn't matter. This wasn't just about going viral. This was about going viral on schedule. The bride's assistant hovered by the analytics display with a look I've seen too many times. A look that said, "Fix this or she'll combust." I should have known right then. We all should have. But we'd seen glitches before. There was always a lag, always a dip before the algorithm caught on. We thought this was just another hiccup. We thought we were still in control. We weren't. The venue had been scouted nearly a year in advance, not for availability, but for optics. It was perched on a rooftop in West Hollywood, facing the skyline at just the right angle to catch the last blush of golden hour. Every surface had been mapped for photogenic symmetry. Every corner had been tested against multiple filters to ensure optimal virality across platforms. Nothing was spontaneous. Not the draping, not the menu, not the guest list. Even the candid laughter photos were scheduled, down to the moment when the couple's dog would trot out in a custom tux for his close-up. The bride had approved every micro-detail. The height of the cake tiers, the shimmer density of the champagne, the percentage of pale pink in the petals. One vendor had been fired for describing a napkin fold as classic instead of timeless. She wasn't being difficult. She was being exact. Each guest was handpicked not for sentiment but for influence. No family member was safe from the algorithm. If they didn't post, they weren't prioritized. Some guests were brought in specifically for their aesthetic, to be photographed in the background of key moments, like set dressing. This wasn't about love. It wasn't even about performance. It was about brand alignment. Her brand. From the moment the invitations were embossed, this was a global debut. A fusion of wedding and product launch. A milestone disguised as matrimony. There was a digital operations tent set up just off-site, masked behind silk draping and hydrangeas. Inside, data engineers, social strategists, and one very twitchy analytics coordinator monitoring the hashtag's real-time engagement on 3 major platforms. The hashtag #ForeverStartsNow had been focus tested against a dozen variations. Short, emotional, and free of double meanings. It had been laser-etched onto the cake knife, printed on the edges of cocktail napkins, woven into the stitching of the bridal veil. It had its own sponsored GIF. It wasn't just part of the wedding. It was the wedding. By 1 p.m., the dress rehearsal had gone live as a teaser. Behind-the-scenes clips were being stitched and scheduled. A carefully staged, accidental moment, the bride mistaking the coordinator for a guest and laughing, had already been viewed 280,000 times by mid-afternoon. Everything was tracking beautifully. Except the counter. The LED analytics counter was installed beside the DJ booth, disguised as a modern art installation. Guests thought it was decorative. It wasn't. It was a live pulse. Red if engagement dropped, white if it stayed steady, gold if it climbed. It never turned gold. Not even once. The analytics team had tried to buffer the numbers at first, running silent paid promotions to seed momentum. But organic engagement was lower than predicted. Significantly lower. Guests were snapping photos, yes, but fewer were posting them. And those who did weren't using the hashtag consistently. Some added extra emojis. Some misspelled it. One extremely popular guest used an entirely different hashtag altogether. The bride hadn't noticed yet, but her assistant had. You could see the panic flicker in her eyes every time she glanced at the monitor. At 2:45 p.m., a mini-crisis broke out over the shade of roses in the aisle arrangements. They were 2 shades off from the approved palette. Close enough that most people wouldn't notice. But she noticed. The florist tried to explain weather conditions, shipping delays, natural pigment variation. It didn't matter. To her, it was a crack, a flaw, a failure. She didn't yell. Not then. Not yet. She simply asked her assistant to remove the arrangements. All of them. And replace them with white calla lilies, not in the original plan, not in the budget, not even available on site. But somehow they arrived. Within an hour. That's how much power she had that day. And yet, the hashtag still lagged. When the groom arrived on site, late and quiet as always, he was met with a cloud of tension. He smiled politely, kissed the bride's cheek during the pre-shoot, and stood where he was told. But he didn't speak much. He never did. His presence was more decorative than participatory. Some said he was nervous. Others said he was just coasting, the way he always had, letting her lead the show while he coasted on residual fame and expensive cologne. But there was something else in his face that day. Something that looked less like indifference and more like retreat. At 3:30 p.m., the dress change happened. The third look, shimmering ivory, barely structured, designed to float behind her in the breeze. It had taken 6 fittings. She emerged from the changing suite like a monarch entering battle, flawless, glowing, unreadable. And yet, as she approached the analytics tent for a quick status check, something flickered. She stopped. She stared at the counter. And then she blinked, once, slow, like someone waking from a dream they thought they could control. The hashtag had dropped again, now sitting at rank 78. Guests were drinking. A few were already slipping out the side exits to hit another event. One bridesmaid had taken off her heels and was sitting on the floor behind the dessert table, scrolling through unrelated reels. The energy was changing. The machine was wobbling. The bride turned slowly, walked back to her mark, said nothing. The coordinator whispered something into an earpiece. A camera operator shifted their focus. The planner took a sip of something stronger than water. And me? I exhaled, for the first time all day, and realized we were no longer producing this moment. We were witnessing it. It happened mid-toast. The LED counter flickered. The analytics coordinator's face dropped. The bride's assistant turned pale. And somewhere between the second flute of champagne and a carefully scripted speech from a choreographed surprise guest, it hit her. The hashtag wasn't trending. Not only had it failed to climb, it was slipping. Rapidly. From the mid-70s into digital oblivion. She glanced at a tablet someone had left on a nearby chair. Just one look. Her expression didn't change at first, but her shoulders did. They tensed. One hand clenched. A subtle shift, imperceptible to anyone who wasn't looking for it. But I was. And then the spiral began. It wasn't loud, not at first. There were no screams, no thrown glasses. Just silence. Just stillness. The kind of stillness that unsettles. She turned away from the group mid-sentence and began moving through the space with slow, exacting steps. Guests paused their small talk. A server noticed the energy shift and stopped mid-pour. Even the photographer, the one with the editorial lens and no social skills, put his camera down. She made her way toward the reception table. Her dress, the fourth of the day, shimmered like static under the lighting. A centerpiece sat slightly off-center. Not dramatically so. Just enough to break symmetry. She reached out, lifted it, and dropped it. Not a toss. Not a dramatic hurl. Just a vertical release. Like letting go of a dead weight. It smashed. Water. Glass. Peonies. Crystals. A flicker of rose gold ribbon. The noise was sharper than expected, clean and jarring. The music stuttered. Guests froze. Servers blinked. Then she turned, scanning the room with a look of clinical disappointment. As if she was seeing it all, the shimmer, the shine, the curated perfection, and realizing none of it had done what it was supposed to do. And then it escalated. One of the LED candles had been programmed to flicker at intervals synced with the beat of the playlist. She picked it up, studied it, and smashed it against a crystal charger. Shards flew. Someone gasped. That was the moment the DJ cut the music. For a second, it was silent. Then murmurs began. Chairs creaked. A wine glass tilted. A planner clutched their clipboard like a flotation device. She moved toward the analytics tent, brushing past the crowd, her heels clicking like gunshots. She didn't have to say anything. The assistant scurried in her path, trying to catch up. The crew tried to block her entrance. She brushed past them. Inside, numbers were dropping. The hashtag was now in triple digits. Not even her most loyal followers were posting. Or if they were tagging the wrong thing. Worse, some were tagging the venue directly. Others had pivoted to humor, posting behind-the-scenes clips with ironic captions. The narrative had fractured. This wasn't a wedding anymore. It was a meme. Outside, the guests were growing restless. Phones were out. No longer discreet. No longer on message. Some were filming her. Some were filming each other filming her. One influencer live-streamed from the bar, whispering, "This is insane," before the connection dropped. Back inside, the bride stared at the metrics like they'd betrayed her. Then she turned and charged back into the reception space. She passed the groom on the way. He had just finished a toast to no one in particular. Something about love and reinvention and believing in the next chapter. He looked shell-shocked. His eyes followed her as she approached the dessert table. That's where the real damage happened. The cake, a 5-tier sculpture of edible pearls and hand-painted fondant, had taken 3 days to build and 3 people to deliver. Each layer was inspired by a core moment in their relationship. The top tier held a miniature sculpture of them both, arms entwined, hashtag etched in edible silver across the base. She reached it, paused, raised her hand, and knocked the top tier off with one motion. It rolled. It cracked. It fell. Silence collapsed under the weight of the spectacle. One guest laughed. A dry, stunned, inappropriate laugh. Another snapped a photo and didn't bother to silence their shutter sound. You could hear the click from halfway across the floor. The DJ restarted the music. Wrong cue. A romantic ballad began playing over the sound of frosting hitting marble. One of the producers turned to me and whispered something, but I didn't catch it. I couldn't. Because just then, she picked up a mic. The one meant for the final thank you. The sponsored closing moment. She activated it. Her voice sliced through the air, not screaming, but cold, controlled. She didn't beg for order. She didn't explain. She simply stated that nothing had gone to plan, that some people had failed her, and that if the world wanted to see chaos, they could have it. Somewhere in the back, someone whispered, "Is this still part of the show?" But it wasn't. Not anymore. The cake lay shattered on the floor, sugar pearls scattered like shrapnel, layers of fondant caved in on themselves. And still, the cameras rolled. Not ours. Not the production crew. The guests. The influencers. The strangers with smartphones, each one now a documentarian of disaster. The bride, dress torn at the hem, and Mike still live, didn't cry. She didn't tremble. She simply stood in the center of the wreckage, eyes fixed on the glowing analytics counter. The numbers had stopped moving altogether. Static. Dead signal. The groom was gone. No one saw him leave. 1 minute he was standing beside the fountain, and the next absence. Some whispered he slipped out through the staff entrance. Others claimed he was spotted in the valet lot, still in his tux, making a call he'd postponed for too long. One of the bridesmaids was crying in the bathroom. The planner was on the floor behind the dessert table, hugging a clipboard like a lifeline. And the servers? Most of them had retreated to the service hallway, staring at each other in wide-eyed silence. What had started as a celebration, no, a production, had turned into an unraveling. And no one knew whether to intervene or film more. Then the house lights came up. Bright. Unforgiving. Someone hit the wrong switch, or maybe the right one. There was no more illusion to hide behind. For a moment, no one moved. Not even her. The bride stood like a monument to digital grief, smeared makeup, frosting dappled satin, still clutching the mic. Then, as if someone had pressed stop, she turned, walked off the stage, and disappeared into the bridal suite. And just like that, the wedding was over. Or so everyone thought. Performing arts the twist, unscripted reality. Later that night, after most of the guests had gone, the production tent remained lit. Inside were 3 people, the supervising editor, the director, and me. We replayed the footage in silence. Not the stage moments. Not the confessional clips or the first dance that never happened. The meltdown. Raw. Unearned. Unfiltered. It was magnetic. No actor could have delivered that kind of collapse. No writer could have scripted that timing. It was lightning, painful, dangerous, beautiful in its own horrifying way. This wasn't the show we set out to make. It was better. The next day, we received the call we expected but didn't want. The bride's camp wanted all footage pulled. NDAs reactivated. Contracts redlined. The narrative resealed. Officially, the pilot was shelved. Creative differences, the press would say. Unairable. Incomplete. But the footage exists. It lives on a drive, inside a climate-controlled room, known only to a few. No title screen. No score. Just raw, undiluted collapse from first shimmer to final scream. She never spoke publicly about what happened. But weeks later, a single post appeared on her newly rebranded profile. Black background. White text. There's always more to the story. Some people just can't handle the edit. No context. No hashtags. But we knew. We all knew. And if the right platform ever comes calling, with the right offer, the right timing, maybe the world will finally see the wedding they were never supposed to witness. No one talks about the wedding anymore. Not in the way they were supposed to. There are no polished carousels on Instagram. No glowing post-event thank you videos. No behind-the-scenes blooper reels. The custom hashtag still exists, but it's now a ghost town, occupied by half-deleted posts and a few tasteless memes. The footage? Still locked away. The bride's team offered hush money to every vendor with a phone. The planner signed an NDA so airtight it practically hummed. The platform execs backed away slowly, like people realizing the fire they'd helped light was already out of control. Officially, it never happened. Unofficially? It's everywhere. A few clips leaked shaky footage of the cake collapsing, a slow pan across her face as she realized the hashtag wasn't trending, the sound of a mic hitting marble. Just fragments. But the internet's good at turning fragments into myths. Some say it was a nervous breakdown. Others insist it was a stunt, a meta-commentary on influencer culture that went too far. One gossip account claimed the entire wedding was fake from the beginning. No license, no officiant, no intention of signing anything. Just a spectacle staged for virality. Maybe that's true. Maybe it isn't. Maybe the whole point was to blur the lines so completely that even the people inside it couldn't tell anymore. I still have a copy of the raw footage. It sits on an encrypted drive in a drawer I rarely open. No titles. No edits. Just hours of unscripted chaos, soft-shaded glamour, and one perfect downfall caught in real time. I've watched it more than once. Not because I enjoy the wreckage, but because I can't stop thinking about that single moment when it all could have gone another way. When she looked at the counter, realized she wasn't winning, and doubled down on destruction. There's something addictive about that kind of certainty. It's the most honest thing she ever gave us. And if the right buyer ever comes forward, someone bold enough to ignore the PR backlash, someone who understands that attention is currency, then maybe the world will get to see the real pilot. Not hashtag forever, but something truer. Something raw. Something no algorithm could control. The wedding that broke the system. And maybe saved it.